G'day guys, welcome to my What's for Dinner marathon. This is a compilation video of my What's for Dinner videos all in one. I've put the timestamps in the description box if there's a particular recipe you want to go to. So the first one is Mexican pulled pork. So for this, we're going to use a pork shoulder. It's about 1.1 kilos. And what he's going to do is going to slice it so the seasoning can penetrate into the meat. So not cutting it the whole way through, just some slashes into it. Then he's chopped up one onion and as well as the seasoning, which has oregano, smoked paprika, cumin, as well as slicing up one onion, and then he's putting that all into the slow cooker pot and just massaging the meat, trying to get in as much of the seasoning as he can into the pork, and then he's going to shake it off so that all the onion's on the bottom. So he gave it a really good massage, and this is really important to get that flavors throughout, otherwise the flavoring's just going to sit on the bottom. So this is definitely an area he spent a bit of time doing.
Break it down to a second, a millionth of a dream. Go for the limit with the power of believe. Just soak it up like...
And then once he'd done that, he poured in a cup of the beef stock right over the top. And then so all of the onion and the 3 garlic cloves are definitely down the bottom now. He put it on slow cook for 8 hours, but he started checking it from 6 hours onwards until it was cooked and just falling apart. Then once the pork was done, he used some corn chips, sour cream, avocado, a red onion, tomato and coriander. And what he did was he sliced them into small pieces and shredded the pork. On a plate he put the corn chips, the pork, some cheese, and then put that under the grill for 2 to 3 minutes. And then he took it out and he topped it with the tomato, the avocado, the coriander and a large dollop of sour cream, and this was just delicious. This is so yummy, so good, and it's a great dish to have when you've got people over. My family came and we had this in the center. We did about 3 plates of it and everyone helped themselves. It's a really nice dish. Definitely recommend this, and this was not a slow cooker fail. This was a real win in the slow cooker. Day night we had a seafood laksa. First, he began by cutting up 3 flathead fillets that he picked up from the fish shop this morning. While he was there, he also brought some prawns, 400 grams worth. This is a great one-pot meal, so starting off with a dessert spoon of laksa paste. I don't tolerate too spicy foods, so we're just going to start off with that and we'll just try it throughout and add more paste as we need to. After the paste has become fragrant, which occurs at about 2 minutes, then add in 3 cups of chicken stock, coconut milk and 3 cups of cold water. He then brought it to the boil before adding in the vermicelli noodles. He then left it to simmer for about another 4 minutes before adding in the seafood, so the 400 grams of prawns and the 3 flathead fillet, allowing that to simmer for about 3 minutes and then it's done. So to garnish it, we like to put the bean shoots on the top, so rinsing them out, coriander as well as lime and chili. Dave's going to be the only one that has chili. This meal is just delicious. I absolutely love it. Totally recommend it. And as you saw, it's pretty quick to make too. Is glazed honey pork ribs. So to make the marinade, we're going to need 1/3 cup of plum sauce, putting that into a bowl, and then 1/4 cup of honey, before adding in 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and 1 tablespoon of grated fresh ginger. And then 2 teaspoons of crushed garlic, and then 1/2 teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice powder, and lastly 1/3 cup of cold strong tea. Then mix that all together. Dave's wearing gloves to do this. He's putting 1.5 kilos of pork ribs into the marinade and then mixing that until it's completely coated. He tends to put it in the fridge for about 4 hours, but you could do it overnight as well. Then he's preheated the oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Drain the pork, but keep the marinade, don't chuck that out. And then he's putting that into a tray, and then he's going to coat each one with the marinade. Then using a spoon, he's coating each rib with the marinade and letting it cook. He's going to cook it for 45 minutes. While he's doing that, he's going to work on the veggies. So corn, sweet potato and carrot. To make the carrots more interesting, he's cutting them diagonally, and then the sweet potato. Halfway through cooking the ribs, you take it out, you turn them over, and you brush with more marinade. And then put it back in the oven until 45 minutes is up. And then serve with veggies. We ended up going back and eating all of the ribs. They were just delicious. The next dish we had was stir fry. This time though, Dave decided to use kangaroo as the meat instead of beef. So he just made his standard sauce that he always does, which is 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce, half a tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of water, and 2 teaspoons of crushed garlic, as well as 1 teaspoon of ginger. He likes to make the sauce earlier in the day. So then over on the stove, he heated up the oil, just using some peanut oil, and put in the sliced kangaroo. Stir fried that for a couple of minutes until it was cooked through. He removed that from the heat once that was cooked, just put into a bowl at the side before adding in the frozen veggies. Once the frozen veggies were no longer frozen, he drained off that water and put back in the beef, as well as the sauce, mixed it around for a minute, and then it was good to go. And then we had hoki noodles with it again. So just like I said before, he just prepared that exactly the same, put it into bowls and ate it. It was delicious. I really do like this meal because it's such a great way to just get veggies into your diet. Stir-fried beef with bok choy. So first off, he's going to start by chopping up the ingredients. So he's got 4 spring onions here and he's chopping them into short lengths. And then using 3 bok choys, he's going to chop them into roughly 4 cups of bok choy. So this is a new chopping board that we bought on our road trip. It was $10 at Woolworths. Next, he's chopping up 500 grams of beef steak into nice thin slices after he's removed that excess fat. Next, he's making up 1.5 cups of chicken stock, and on the side he's putting in 2 teaspoons of corn flour and 1 tablespoon of black bean sauce. Our tablespoon measurement was in the dishwasher, so he's using the half tablespoon measurement. So that's why there's 2 scoops going in. Then he's crushing up those stock cubes and mixing it all together, and making sure to get all that black bean sauce out of the container. Then over to the stove, he's roughly putting 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil and then 2 tablespoons of soy sauce into the pan. He's then adding in 1 teaspoon of garlic, mixing that around together before adding in that 500 grams of steak. Then he's going to mix it until it's brown, but it's not fully cooked. He's removing that from the heat, and then into the same saucepan, he's adding in those spring onions, bok choy, and bean shoots. So 2 cups worth of bean shoots that have been rinsed, and he's stirring on a high heat for 30 seconds. And then adding the beef back into the pan before adding in that blend of corn flour with the black bean sauce and chicken stock, and stirring on high heat for 1 minute. And then that's it. To serve, he drizzled on some sweet chili sauce. When I was pregnant, I had gestational diabetes, so I used these cups of rice that were low GI rice, these mixed rice blends. They were quite cheap and they're 45 seconds in the microwave and they're good to go. So we've kept them around because it's so easy to just chuck them in the microwave and there's your rice. And I find by having the mixture of rice and black bean rice and basmati rice, it makes it so much more interesting. This was a really nice dish, and like I said, we put sweet chili on the top of ours, not our toddlers. This is a really fresh dish. The bok choy was really nice. The next night we're having salmon and pasta Mornay. Dave's got a great hack here for chopping up finely the spring onion. So after you've removed the end, twist the spring onion, then you can chop it up really thin. Next he's juicing a nice fresh lemon. He needs 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. So pouring that tablespoon of lemon juice into a Pyrex container and then adding in 1 cup of milk. We use full cream milk in our house. And adding in half a cup of sour cream. This is our IKEA spatula and it's fantastic for removing sour cream from its container as well as the cup measurement. Next, Dave finely chopped up half a cup of fresh parsley. Heading over to the stove, putting in 30 grams of butter, adding in the spring onions and 2 teaspoons of minced garlic and 1 tablespoon of flour, and just mixing that on low heat for 3 minutes before slowly adding in the milk, cream and lemon juice in a jug. Stirring constantly as you combine it and stir over the medium heat for 3 minutes. Before adding in the salmon. Now the salmon is from roughly a 425 gram can and it's been drained and flaked, so it's in nice small pieces like this, and adding the parsley into the pan and stirring for 1 minute. While you've been doing this, over there in the background you can see that he's been cooking up 400 grams of small shell pasta, and then he's going to combine that in, turn the hot plate off, and we found it best seasoned with cracked pepper. We had the same thing the next night. The next meal is Pepperoni Penne, and this is a great freezer meal. So starting off, Dave's finely chopping 1 onion and then using 1 red and 1 green capsicum that is sliced. The reason we like to use the red and green capsicum is it makes it a really nice bright dish. Next he's chopping up the pepperoni, so removing the outer skin and then slicing it in half the pepperoni and then really thin slices. And then adding it into the glass bowl. I love how good this glass bowl looks. If you recently watched my Kmart haul, we bought it there for $6 for this particular reason. Next, Dave is slicing up 5 pieces of bacon after he's removed the fat, and he's just chopping it into small pieces. Next, he's adding half a cup of tomato paste to that mixture and 1 teaspoon of garlic. When we originally did this recipe before kids, we'd have 1 teaspoon of chili as well. Then using an electric fry pan, he's going to fry all those ingredients and allow them to simmer for 30 minutes before turning to a low heat.
Memories all I got, like an afterthought. What we felt and said.
Here he's adding in 2 cups of white wine and he's going to let it simmer for 30 minutes. We just use cask wine. Then turning to a low heat, he's going to add in 1 small bottle of thickened cream and the cooked penne, which is a full packet of penne pasta. And then he's going to cook that for a further 30 minutes. Like I said, this is a fantastic freezer meal. When I was pregnant with our first, we did a big cook up and filled our freezer with freezer meals, and we had about 8 of these in here, and they really do reheat well and they still keep their flavour. Off, we've got Satay Beef Str Fry. So Dave's going to start off by making the satay sauce and putting it into a food processor. So putting in 1 small onion, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of turmeric, 1 teaspoon of grated lemon rind, and a tablespoon of lemon juice. He's then chopping up some fresh coriander. It's probably roughly about 2 tablespoons worth. Then 1 tablespoon of peanut oil and 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. While he's got the chopping board out, he's going to chop up 4 spring onions, but this is not going in the food processor. And then he's going to mix that paste completely together. Then on the stove, he's got half a cup of crunchy peanut butter and a can of coconut milk, and he's just heating that until it's completely smooth. Then he removed that from the heat, and using the wok, he's going to put a dash of peanut oil, and he's sliced up 500 grams of beef steak, and in batches he's going to do the beef steak and the paste. Once all the beef's been cooked, he's going to add it all back in together. Then he's going to add in that peanut coconut milk mixture, then adding in a small can of water chestnuts, a small can of champignon mushrooms, and then those spring onions. Once it's all hot and stirred in together, then it's ready to be served. To serve, Dave just likes to add some coriander on the top. So Dave found a recipe online and he's modified it. So 1.5 cups of self-raising flour and half a cup of water. In the original recipe, which he found months and months ago, it had salt as well. We don't bother doing salt. And then a tablespoon of oil. So he mixes that all together with a fork, and then he puts it on the bench and continues to knead it. And of course, he's got his little helper as well.
Scene that keeps playing on repeat, ignores the rule of thumb. Oh, where does it come from? Oh, where does it come from? All your emotions.
Here it was a little bit dry when he was kneading it, so he just added in a splash more water. Then he split it up into 3 balls for 3 pizzas. Then they both rolled it out as thin as can be. This is a great activity to do with your toddler. They love rolling. My daughter does anyway, so it's a lot of fun to do together. Alrighty, so Dave sets out all his toppings around the stove. So we've got ham, mushrooms, red capsicum, green capsicum, onion, pineapple, little pineapple pieces. Someone's enjoying some pineapple, pepperoni, mozzarella cheese, and baby spinach. Then cooking on medium heat, puts the pasta base into a frying pan and then adds on some pasta sauce he's using here. We didn't have tomato paste, so he's just using some pasta sauce, covering the bottom of that, then grating at the time some Parmesan cheese before adding on all the different toppings. So I'll show you what the toppings are just so you've got some ideas, and then I'll let you know which is the best at the end. He cooks it on the stove until the base is brown before putting it in the oven until the cheese has melted and it's a nice golden colour. There's no set time or anything like that, just goes by how it's cooking on the day.
Like a cold drop of rain coming down from a clear sky. Yeah. Like a honeybee taking off that really shouldn't fly. Yeah. Like a snowflake falling down on a summer day. It's just amazing. It's 1,000,000 to 1, 1,000,000 to 1. It really couldn't be. Oh, 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 oh. You're my kind of one of a kind. Oh, 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 oh. I'm gonna get out there and say it, 'cause there ain't gonna be one more like you, no. Ain't gonna be, ain't gonna be, ain't gonna be one more like you, no. Ain't gonna be, ain't gonna be. I could search high and low, but I know, I know, I know, I know, I know that there ain't gonna be one more like you, no. You're my kind of one of a kind. Like a black swan swimming about in a sea of white. Yeah. Like a bouncer Saturday night acting really nice. That can't be right. Like the most beautiful girl in the world hitting up your phone. It's so wrong.
Like I said, this is quite a healthy pizza. We did the vegetarian one, which was really delicious. Meat lovers, and then a combination. My favourite would have definitely been the combination. Just loved the taste of the cheese, I think, mainly. It was really, really nice. Thanks so much for watching. Definitely think about giving these pizzas a try. I totally recommend them. They're easy to make and taste absolutely delicious, and you can really individualise it for everyone's tastes. Thanks. Thursday night for dinner, we're having chicken tikka masala with fresh vegetables as well as using some frozen vegetables. So the fresh vegetables Dave's chopping up are onions, carrots, sweet potato and capsicum. And then we've got this big bag of frozen veggies that is actually really cost effective. We just use these veggies to bulk up meals. After all the veggies and the chicken were cut into cubes. Oh, and I forgot to mention that we're having pumpkin as well.
My time now. I'm gonna be myself, or I could be someone else. No one's stopping me now. I'm gonna skip my breaks. I'm gonna make mistakes. I just wanna feel alive. It's just what I do when I'm out, so try not.
So first off, he's added in about 1/3 of the tikka masala paste and then just heats that up until it's fragrant before adding in the onions, then removing that from the stove, adding in the chicken until it's cooked as well as some more sauce, and then adding in the vegetables and the onions as well as the leftover sauce. The way to get all the sauce out of the jar is he's just adding a little bit of water, giving it a shake, and then adding that into the pan. While that's simmering for 15 minutes, I've put on some basmati rice just in our rice cooker. We like to use the basmati because it's a low GI, so it leaves you fuller for longer. There was plenty of tikka masala left over. It did a further 2 more meals for us as a family. Like I said, it was a great combination of using the fresh vegetables as well as the frozen veggies. Satay drumstick. So first off, Dave's slicing 2 onions and putting 1 teaspoon of garlic and 1 teaspoon of butter into this container into the microwave for 3 minutes. While this is happening, he's putting the drumsticks on the baking tray. We're trying baking paper underneath because our trays keep getting wrecked. If you've got any good ideas to help prevent the honey and all that getting stuck on the bottom, please let us know. Then he's removing the Pyrex container from the microwave and putting in 2 teaspoons of whole grain mustard and 1 teaspoon of curry powder. quarter of a cup of peanut butter. We use crunchy or smooth depending on what we've got in the cupboard. A quarter of a cup of honey. 1 cup of chicken stock. If you wanted to make it even hotter, you could use a dash of Tabasco sauce, but we're not going to. Then he's going to mix that all together and cover the drumsticks on the tray with this mixture. And then he's going to cook for 30 minutes at 190 degrees Celsius before turning over. And when he's turning over, he's going to cover the drumsticks with that sauce, just pouring that on it again, and then cook for another 30 minutes. We like to serve this with basmati rice. Basmati rice is low GI rice, and that's what we like to use in our house. This meal is a family favourite. Often we'll even put some greens on the side, so some steamed broccoli. The next night we had char-grilled salmon with avocado salsa. Dave likes trying new things, and this was a new dish to try. So slicing up 1 large avocado into really thick slices, placing that in a bowl, then chopping up 1 small red onion sliced really thinly. He then added in 2 tablespoons of fresh dill, which was chopped up, and 2 tablespoons of baby capers. We haven't cooked with capers before, so we've got the rest of the jar left. If there's a recipe you love, please tell us in the comments below so that we can use up all those capers. It smells really fresh because of the dill. Next he's making up the dressing, so squeezing half a cup of lemon juice and 1/8 of a cup of olive oil into a jar and then shaking it all up till it's completely mixed together. Then he's seasoning the salmon with salt and pepper and then cooking it up on a grill plate. He likes to cook it in butter, just finds that gives it a better flavour. Once the salmon's cooked halfway through, then he flips them over. Whoops, doesn't matter. And then to serve, each plate has some washed baby rocket leaves, the salmon on top of the rocket with the avocado salsa, and then a drizzle of the dressing. This was delicious. This was really, really nice. Like I said, tell me your capers recipes in the comments below. I'd love to try them out. It just wasn't filling enough, so we ended up using some avocado on some naan bread that we had left over from another meal. Tonight we're having another dish that Dave's mum makes. It's called Pepperoni Penne. However, tonight we're going to be using Hungarian salami because it's not as spicy. To begin, 1 onion has been sliced and put in the electric frying pan. It's not turned on. And then 1 red and green capsicum, Dave's slicing there. We tend to use a red and a green just because it gives a fantastic colour to the dish. Then removing the outside of salami and then cutting that in half and then slicing it into thin pieces. And then chopping up 5 slices of bacon and putting that all in the electric frying pan before adding in half a cup of tomato paste. And about a teaspoon of crushed garlic, and then turning that on. And then shortly adding in some white wine. Now Dave's mum puts in 2 glasses. Dave's just roughly putting in some now. And allowing that to simmer for 30 minutes before turning to low heat and adding in a small container of full cream. And cooking for a further 30 minutes. While this is all happening, he's cooking some penne on the stove. He then drains the penne in the kitchen sink and then uses that saucepan and spoons in the penne mixture before adding back the penne and mixing it all together. This meal is also a fantastic freezer meal. It tastes really good when you reheat it. Lastly, spaghetti bolognese. This is one of my main meals that I tend to make. I make it different every time. So finely chopped up 1 onion and 3 rashers of bacon, and then cooking that before adding in some mince, 500 grams of premium mince. And then normally I use crushed tomatoes, but for some reason we'd bought these whole tomatoes, so we put those in. And to bulk it out, we're using 4 bean mix. Sometimes I'll use green peas. Sometimes I'll use green peas or corn or carrot or green beans, depending on what we've got in the cupboard. In a can is what I tend to add. And then the most important thing to add is this Heinz Big Red tomato soup. This is what gives it really good flavour. And then letting that simmer for 5 minutes before adding in the mixed herbs. So I just go rough here. So I just roughly put in as much as I want, and then some basil leaves, a little bit in the middle, and a little bit of oregano leaves. If I've got fresh basil, I do like to use that, but I didn't have that today. And then mix that all together for a further 10 minutes. I always test it to see what the flavours are like, to see if I need to add more herbs, but this one's good. Then serving on some fresh spaghetti pasta and some mozzarella cheese. Next we had fettuccine carbonara. Now, not the traditional carbonara, because Dave likes to add mushrooms. So first off, he's chopping up those 6 bacon rashers. Next, he's slicing up about 300 grams of mushrooms. Then he's grating half a cup of Parmesan cheese. Sometimes we've used the shredded cheese, but it definitely tastes better if you just grate your own Parmesan cheese. So half a cup of that. Then this recipe requires 4 egg yolks. So he's separating the egg yolks and whites. Then he's beating lightly those egg yolks together. So first off in the pan, he's just going to place a piece of bacon just to leave it there until it gets hot before he adds the rest in. And in the background, he's got some boiling water that the fettuccine is going to go into. Once it's hot, then he adds in the rest of the bacon and lets that cook. Then he removes that from the heat, adds a little bit more olive oil, and then cooks the mushrooms. Now the boiling water is ready for the fettuccine, so he puts that in. Here he decided to swap pans to a non-stick pan, so adding in the mushroom, the bacon, the cream. Then he combines the Parmesan cheese and egg yolks and mixes that all together. The fettuccine pasta is ready now, so he drains that off, uses that same saucepan as like a bowl, and puts the fettuccine back in there, adds in the yolk and Parmesan mixture, and then adds in the mushrooms, cream and bacon, and then mixes it all through together, and then it's ready to serve. We like to serve with nice fresh cracked pepper on the top.
Spend my coin for sure. I'm gonna be myself, or I could be someone else. No one's stopping me now. I'm gonna skip my breaks, I'm gonna make mistakes. I just wanna feel alive. It's just what I do when I'm out, so try not to hold me down. Feel alive when I'm in this town. Look at those beautiful stars. I wanna drive a faster car. Nothing can break.
This is another family favourite. Everyone loves eating this one. The next night, Dave made Thai fried noodles with pork and peanuts. He's using the green curry paste because that's what we've got in the pantry, but you could use red also, and 1 teaspoon. He's then removing all the fat from the pork fillet, about 400 grams worth, and slicing it up and adding it to the paste. Then in a separate container, he's putting 500 grams of hoki noodles. I hope I've said that right. Then he's making up 125 mils of chicken stock and 2 teaspoons of corn flour and mixing that all together. In the wok, he's putting a tablespoon of peanut oil, and then he's going to cook up the pork. Once the pork's cooked, he's going to remove that from the wok and add in the noodles. He's already separated the noodles with a fork, and then he's adding in that sauce of the corn flour as well as 2 teaspoons of fish sauce, mixing that all together, then adding in 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, and then he's going to add back in the pork, mix it all together. Then he's adding in 1/3 of a cup of crushed peanuts. You could use whole peanuts, but this is for our toddler as well, so we're going to use crushed peanuts, and then the coriander that was chopped up before. Then to garnish, Dave's added a bit of coriander on the top. Once that is all hot, it's ready to serve. This probably was a little bit salty, but everyone ate all their noodles. One is beef sausage rolls. So what we're going to need for this is 500 grams of beef meat. Putting that into a bowl, Dave has preheated the oven to 220 degrees Celsius, and he's lined 2 baking trays with baking paper. So combining the mince, a chopped up onion, some grated carrot, a can of beans, 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of parsley leaves, half a teaspoon of ground black pepper, half a teaspoon of mixed herbs into a large bowl, and then he's going to place that in the pastry and roll it up. So we like to have ours really big sausage rolls. So using 3 sheets of puff pastry, which he separates and then puts on the bench to thaw a little bit. Into the mixture, he's also adding 1 egg and a can of beans before he gets his hand in there and mixes it all together as best as he can. And then grabbing part of that mixture, he puts that out onto the puff pastry in the center. And as you can see, we like to have a lot. We like to have really big sausage rolls. And then starting at one end, he's going to roll it all up, put the seam underneath before cutting it into 4 pieces, putting that onto a tray, just brushing some full cream milk on the top and sprinkling with sesame seeds.
What's it like to be the one that he turns to when he's out of answers? What's it like to be the one that he comes to when he wants to dance? And I wonder what's that like? I have got him on my mind, but he doesn't know my name, and I'm running out of time. I wish he felt the same, and I'm acting stupid like every day. Don't know what to.
Then once it's nice and brown on the top, he removes that from the oven and it's good to eat. We cook the sausage rolls for about 20 to 25 minutes until golden brown on the top. Okay, so first off, we've got cheesy stuffed eggplant parmigiana. To start off, you're going to need 2 medium eggplants. So cut the leaf and the bottom of each eggplant, and then using a knife, cut a 1 centimetre border in the inside of the eggplant, and then you're going to scoop out that flesh with a spoon. Keep the flesh, don't chuck it aside. Dave's just putting it in a bowl here and he'll use it later. And you'll end up with 4 eggplant boats. And next he's finally chopping up 1 brown onion, and he's going to chop up that eggplant flesh as well. Then over to the stove, heating some butter, adding in the onion and cooking for 5 minutes until soft. Then Dave adds in the chopped up eggplant, stirring occasionally throughout. He's going to cook this for 10 minutes before adding in the garlic we don't have cloves of garlic, so we're going to be using a teaspoon of garlic and cooking that for 1 minute, and then he's going to transfer all that to the bowl and let it cool for 5 minutes. Then he's going to add in some grated parmesan, 1/4 cup, 1 cup of breadcrumbs, about 1 tablespoon of finely chopped oregano leaves, as well as 2 tablespoons of finely chopped fresh basil leaves. And then he's seasoning with salt and pepper and stirring it all together. Then in an oven tray, he's putting 1/4 cup of water and the pasta sauce. So you want a tomato and basil pasta sauce. A handy way to get out all the sauce from these jars is to use a spatula or putting in a teeny tiny bit of water and giving it a really good shake before putting it into the tray. Now this tray was too big, so he's just putting some foil down this end so that the sauce doesn't all run. Next he's putting the eggplant halves into the pasta sauce and filling each of those with the breadcrumb mixture and then pressing down. Then cover the tray with foil and bake for 1 hour in the oven, which is 200 degrees Celsius. Sprinkle with mozzarella and the leftover parmesan, so you've grated 1/3 cup of parmesan cheese, but you only used 1/4 cup in the eggplant mixture. And then cook for a further 15 minutes uncovered until golden. And sprinkle with oregano leaves and serve. This is so delicious. I'm looking forward to having this one again. Sunday night we're having pumpkin soup with multigrain toast. To make the pumpkin soup, we like to use 2 types of pumpkins. So here we're using a Kent as well as a butternut pumpkin. We just find that gives a really nice flavour. So he's chopping both of those up into cubes. Next he's cutting up 2 onions and 3 sticks of celery and 2 medium carrots. Today we're making a thicker stock, so originally with this recipe we did 1.25 litres of vegetable stock, whereas now currently we're using 1 litre. It makes it thicker. We really prefer it this way, it's a lot less watery. On top of the veggies he's adding a teaspoon of fennel seed and a pinch of cumin. Then moving over to the stove, add some olive oil down the bottom of the saucepan before adding in those vegetables. He's cooking the vegetables on low heat for 10 minutes before adding in the pumpkin. Once the pumpkin is soft, then he's going to add in the stock and bring to a boil and allow the pumpkin to cook for about half an hour when it's super soft. Then removing that from the heat, he's going to use a stick mixer until it becomes a puree, and then that's it. The pumpkin soup's ready to go, and just season with some cracked pepper on the top. We are trying to have at least 1 vegetarian meal a week. So this week it's tortellini with eggplant sauce. So first off, Dave's going to chop up 1 red capsicum into small cubes. At the same time he's cooking the tortellini in boiling water. We're using tomato and mozzarella. It was delicious. It was really nice flavours. Then what Dave's doing is chopping up the eggplant into small cubes. This is what takes a bit of the time. And then he's going to be using some fresh basil, 1/2 cup of fresh basil, and he's chopping that up into small pieces also. In a large saucepan, he's putting 2 teaspoons of crushed garlic. You could use fresh cloves, but we didn't have that, so we just keep this in the fridge. Then he's adding in the capsicum, mixing that all together. And he's cooking that for 1 minute before adding in the eggplant on low heat. He's cooking that for 5 minutes before adding in the crushed tomatoes and vegetable stock, which is 1 cup of vegetable stock, and then he's bringing it to a boil. He then reduced the heat for about 10 minutes and let it cook before adding in the basil and drained pasta, and then he mixed it all together and it was good to eat. This was delicious and a very satisfying meal. The next night we had the same with a cup of corn each. Is mushroom soup. So starting off by chopping up 2 onions finely, as well as chopping up 500 grams of mushrooms. Over on the stove is just melting about 60 grams of butter in that saucepan, adding in that onion and 2 teaspoons of crushed garlic, then stirring regularly for 3 minutes before adding in the chopped mushrooms and stirring and cooking for a further 5 minutes. Next he's adding in 1/4 cup of plain flour and stirring, and then 2 1/4 cups of milk and 1 1/2 cups of beef stock. And stirring that all together, bringing it to boil and reducing to low, and then simmering uncovered for 15 minutes before stirring in 1/3 cup of parsley and serving with a dollop of sour cream. This is a great winter warmer. So the next dish we're having is vegetarian chow mein. I'll link the recipe in the description box below. These are all the ingredients we needed. So first off, starting off with separating the hoki noodles. So just following the packet for this, putting them into a jug, separating them and pouring in boiling water, and then making sure they're completely separated. Next, Dave created the sauce using honey, sesame oil, soy sauce and black bean sauce. Personally, I think there was too much soy sauce in it. The sauce wanted 1/3 cup of black bean sauce as well as soy sauce, and personally I think 1/3 cup of soy sauce was just too much. It was just too salty. So next time we do a little bit less of that, and then it had 2 teaspoons of sesame oil as well as honey. Next, Dave chopped up the veggies, so it had 2 onions, 2 celery sticks and some broccolini. I just ended up buying the plain tofu, so we just used this firm tofu, although in the recipe it talked about marinated tofu, but we didn't worry about that. I really found there was enough flavour with the sauce already, so I'm glad I didn't get the marinated tofu, but that's something I could try next time. Then over to the stove in our wok, putting in some oil down the bottom before adding in the onions first off. Once the oil had reached a good heat, Dave added in all the onions and stir-fried that for 1 minute. After a minute, then he added in the broccolini, the celery and the garlic, and then stir-fried that for 3 minutes. and just mixing it regularly throughout. Then he took all that out of the wok, added in a little bit more oil, put the tofu in, and he heated the tofu until it was cooked completely through. He just kept checking it. Then he returned the vegetables back to the wok, as well as putting in the sauce and mixing that all together, and the hoki noodles. Once it was all reheated, he just served it into bowls, and then he topped them with some sesame seeds on top. This week it's a warm beef salad. So first off, I'm going to chop up one medium-sized onion, then slicing up about 50 grams of button mushrooms, before using about 75 grams of green beans. So just chopping the ends off each one and keeping them in about 2 centimetre lengths. To keep this nice and colourful, we used a red capsicum and sliced that into short strips. And we don't tend to have cloves of garlic, so we're using a heaped teaspoon of minced garlic here that we just keep in the fridge at all times. So putting into a saucepan some olive oil, then adding in the onion, then adding in the vegetable mixture, so the beans, the capsicum and the mushrooms, as well as that garlic. Then Dave's adding in 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar and mixing that through. Then he's adding in a can of 4 bean mix after it has been rinsed and drained, and then that's the dish. This is a really good dish, and because it's got those beans, it's got the carbohydrate that helps keep you satisfied. The beans were just lovely and crunchy. It was really delicious. We'll definitely do this one again. The next night we had another vegetarian dish, so quinoa, corn and black bean soup. So starting off with 1 large onion finely chopped, 2 celery sticks finely chopped, and 2 carrots chopped. Dave's placing all those in a bowl. While he's still chopping, he's now going to chop up 1 large zucchini into nice thin slices. And he's going to finely chop 3 truss tomatoes. Over to the stove now, so he's going to heat about 1 tablespoon of olive oil and add in the onion, celery and carrot and cook that for 5 minutes, stirring it regularly throughout. Then he's going to add in 2 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika, 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, cooking that all together for 1 minute, giving it a really good stir as you go. Next, he's adding in those 2 tomatoes and cooking for a further 2 minutes. He's adding in 2 cups of water and then adding in 1/3 cup of quinoa, which we nickname quinoa in our house. A can of black beans that have been rinsed and drained. And then he's going to bring all that to a boil before reducing the heat and letting it simmer, partially covered, for 15 minutes. Then he's adding in the zucchini and a can of corn. We only had a can of peas and corn, so that's what we've added in. And getting it to simmer for 5 minutes before adding in lime juice and 1/4 cup of coriander. This was a delicious hearty meal, and to serve with those extra lime wedges and coriander on the top. We're having some fish fillets with vegetables, so garden peas, carrot, sweet potato and corn.
Sky is turning
And of course, for sauce, I'm going to have some tartar sauce. And this is the best brand that I've found. Do you make your own tartar sauce? I haven't tried it, but maybe that's something I could do in the future. The next night we're having whole grain English muffins with bacon, egg, avocado, as well as some coriander. Delicious. Whoops, I nearly forgot the cheese.
What we can be, life with no distractions, we'll get away. This is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me.
The next night we're having some nice beef steaks, some bok choy and corn kernels.
You better be there when I shake. Watch me rocking if I can't stop. If I should fall, just go ahead. Go and catch me, baby. Ooh, I live it. That's my choo-choo-ah, choo-choo-ah. Ooh, I love it. Crank it up, yeah, yeah, yeah. Turn it up on a higher level. Turn it up, we got this. Turn it up on a higher level. Turn it up, we got this. Turn it up.
Pak choy is really nice and it's really easy to cook. It only needs a couple of minutes in that boiling water. And then for a sauce we use oyster sauce. Simple veal tortellini with pasta sauce and grated Parmesan cheese.
Oh, you make me feel right. Wanna look at you.
Next night we're having fish and veggies. We tend to get whatever frozen fish is on special, so this week it was New Zealand whiting. We're having this with carrots, sweet potato and a can of baby peas and corn. And of course I'm going to have my tartar sauce on it. The next meal I want to share, which is super simple, is we have beans, pumpkin and chicken Kiev. We love our chicken Kiev, so we do have this regularly, but this time we're having pumpkin as the mash instead of sweet potato. These chicken schnitzels, because they were on special and they were really nice. It had a really good coating. It was a really lovely herb coating and we had it with mayo, carrot as well as some spinach on multigrain wraps. Tonight we're having roast lamb with roast veggies. The veggies tonight are going to be sweet potato, pumpkin, carrots, peas and corn. We like to cook our lamb roasts in oven bags, so following the instructions for the lamb roast, which said for pink lamb it needed 20 minutes per 500 grams in the oven, so that's what Dave did based on the weight of the lamb. We love seasoning our veggies with this roast vegetable seasoning. It gives it a delicious flavour.
Break it down to a second, a million thought a dream. Go, go, go for the limit with the power of believe. Just soak it up like a flower, like a summer field, aching to be healed. Just rain on me. You blow me into space, the power of your embrace. Lift me up the ceiling, up and away. Fly me over the rivers, over open seas. Bring me to this feeling, up and away. Cross the sky like a comet, like a shooting star. Do what you gotta to be true to who you are. You're calling me like the rainbow, fill me with your spark. Take me from the dark, so shine on me. You blow me into space, the power of your embrace. Lift me up the ceiling, up and away. Fly me over the rivers, over open seas. Bring me to this feeling, up and away.
So this was absolutely delicious. The lamb ended up being a little bit pink as we got close to the centre, so he put it back in the oven to just cook more. What we ate wasn't as pink. This was such a good meal. The pumpkin and the sweet potato was phenomenal. You guys loved my pie maker marathon, so that's why I did this one. Thanks heaps for watching. Bye!